At 2 a.m. on January 3rd, 2026, the world changed in exactly 4 hours. And we're not talking about a coup. We're not talking about a protest. We are talking about the United States military executing a surgical extraction of a foreign head of state from his own bedroom. Nicolás Maduro is sitting in a brig on the USS Iwo Jima. The regime is decapitated. But if you think that this is the end of the story, you're missing the much bigger, much dangerous picture.
This is the Bad Hombre Podcast.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Everyone's celebrating the lightning strike, but nobody's talking about the vacuum that was left behind. Trump says we're going to run the country. The opposition says it's our turn. And the Venezuelan military, they still have the guns. Like in this video, I want to cut through the noise. We're going to look at Operation Absolute Resolve. And not just the raid, but the aftermath. Because is this liberation? Is it an oil heist? Or is Venezuela about to become the world's most dangerous protectorate? Let's get into it. The raid, how they did it. First, we have to look at the mechanics because the tactical execution tells us exactly what the U.S. strategy is not. This wasn't an invasion. Back when I was born in 1989, when the U.S. went into Panama to get Noriega, they sent 26,000 troops. They occupied the streets, they secured the police station, but this time, there was no boots on the ground. Our research points to Delta Force and the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. They flew in low, likely using electronic warfare to jam the Venezuelan military's comms. They grabbed Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, and got out. But here is the detail that matters. Intelligence suggests that this was an inside job because you don't get to the president's bedroom without help from the guys guarding the door. We believe a CIA source was embedded deep into the Casa Militar, the presidential guard. Now, why does this matter? Because it means the regime didn't fall because of an army. It fell because the money ran out. Loyalty was no longer affordable. But, and this is a huge but, because the U.S. didn't send an occupation force, there is currently nobody policing the streets of Caracas. The head is gone, but the body of the monster is still armed. You're seeing a lot of people online asking, is this even legal? And the answer depends on who you ask, because this is where it gets messy. If you ask Trump administration, they'll say that this is not an act of war. It was a law enforcement bust. They're using the narco-terrorism indictments from back in 2020. There's this thing in U.S. law called the Kerr-Frisbee Doctrine. And basically, it says it doesn't matter how we drag you into the courtroom, even if we kidnapped you, now that you're here, we can try you. But if you ask the rest of the world, like Russia, China, and even allies like Brazil, they are calling this a straight up violation of sovereignty. If you can just fly in and grab a president you don't like, well, the entire rule book of international relations just goes out the window. It sets a precedent that makes a lot of global leaders very nervous. But here's the thing. Legality doesn't matter anymore. Possession is 9/10 of the law. And Maduro is in U.S. custody now. So the real question is, who runs Venezuela today? The power vacuum. Who's actually in charge? This is the part that should worry you, because we have a three-way standoff for control of the country. First, we have the trusteeship model. President Trump came out and said explicitly, we're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe transition. Now, he's talking about a U.S. administrator. He's dismissing the local politicians, and he wants a clean state. Second, you have the Democratic mandate. That's Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez. They won the election back in 2024, and they have the people. Now, they're saying, no, we don't need a U.S. governor. We need our president-elect to take office now. If the U.S. ignores them, well, this stops looking like a liberation and it starts looking like an occupation. And third, you had the Venezuelan military, the defense minister, Padrino Lopez. He declared a state of external commotion. Now, this is martial law. The military has not surrendered. Without Maduro to pay them, there is a massive risk that these generals just turn into warlords. We could be looking at the Libyanization of Venezuela. Now, the oil play, okay? So I'm going to address the comment that I already know is being typed below. This shit is just for the oil. Well, yes and no. Because Trump was pretty blunt. He said he wants U.S. oil companies to go in and start making money. But here's the reality check that nobody mentions. Venezuela oil, that industry is broken. It's a rusted jewel. Production crashed from 3.5 billion barrels a day to barely 800,000. The infrastructure is rotting. And we're not talking about just walking in and turning on the tap. We're talking about needing $50 to $80 billion of investment just to get the gears turning again. So if the plan is to use Venezuelan oil to pay for Venezuela's reconstruction, that money is not going to come next week. That money is years away. In the meantime, who's going to pay for the food? Who's going to pay for the hospitals? Now, let's talk about like the Puerto Rico scenario. Like, is Venezuela the new Puerto Rico? So, like, what does the future look like? Because I've seen people asking if Venezuela is going to become the 51st state. And the answer is no. Because the U.S. doesn't want to absorb that debt or grant citizenship to 28 million people. But it may become a protectorate. So think about it. If the U.S. is running the country, managing the oil revenue and providing security because the Venezuela army is disbanded, you basically have a client state. It's economic dependency without political representation. It's a model that mimics Puerto Rico's status, but without the passports. And that, my friends, is a recipe for long-term resentment. So what's the verdict? Like, here's the bottom line. The removal of Maduro, it's a good thing for human rights because it ends criminal enterprise. It opens the door for humanitarian aid to finally get in. But the how, that matters. We have decapitated the government, but left the gun-toting hands intact. If the U.S. hands power to Edmundo Gonzalez quickly and helps rebuild, well, this goes down as a victory, just like Panama. But if we try to run the country for too long, if we prioritize oil over institutions, we're going to face an insurgency in the barrios that will make the last 10 years look peaceful. So here's the thing. I want to know what you think. Like, is this a liberation? Is this the start of a U.S. occupation? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. This is Chris. This is Bad Hombres TV. I'll see you next time.